Hello, my name is Oliver Rodriguez, and I'm a developer advocate based in Austin, Texas. Today, I'm going to talk to you about building a submission for Call for Code Challenge, which is a competition that asks developers to build applications to improve the state of disaster preparedness and responses around the world. Through our long history of working with the world's developers, particularly in the open source community, we know their impact as the builders of modern business. We also know through our long history of leading the industry to leverage technology for societal good that developers can have a similar impact as the builders of a better society, both in ethical considerations for how technology is built and more directly in the use of their skills to address some of the most pressing problems of our modern world. We also know that developers have incredible power to shape our lives, but we often only hear about developers in a negative light, such as when things go wrong, or something's hacked, or if there's a data breach. Um, Call for Code was established to pose a question that is vital to the world, or to give developers one cause to rally behind every year. So, why would you as a developer get involved with this? Well, this could be your chance as a developer to use the latest technology to drive positive and long-lasting change across the world. And if that's not enough to get you going, the winning solution can get $200,000 and will see their software actually implemented in the area that desperately needs it. There are real people that your solution could someday help. If you'd like to know more about the challenge and what to start building, head over to callforcode.org/challenge to register. Also, to help you get started, we've compiled some developer resources over at developer.ibm.com/call-for-code, which includes some sample code. We'll be taking a look at some of these resources later on. The tech area that I'll be speaking about today is how we can build resilient financial networks to execute secure transactions quickly. So what that means is in times of disaster, being able to track where donations and aid are going is crucial for ensuring that people get what they need when they need it. There are a few technologies that can help us do this, but the main one that I will be speaking about today is a blockchain. And for those of you that don't know what blockchain is, a blockchain can basically be described as a distributed ledger technology for keeping track of assets in a network. If we can build future financial and aid networks on blockchain technology, we can improve the distribution of aid before and after a major disaster by letting all parties in a network know where the supplies they need are. So let's go ahead and take a look at the resource page on developer.ibm.com/call-for-code. So on the page, you can see a big blue button to get started. If you go ahead and click that, you'll be taken over to the developer resource section. And so on the left side, you can see 6 tech area focuses that we've compiled resources for. As I mentioned, the area that I'll be speaking about is building resilient financial networks to execute secure transactions quickly. So let's go ahead and look at what's in this tech area. So the first thing you'll notice here are these code patterns. These are basically starter applications and sample code to get you going. And these are focused around specific problems and how to use the technology to solve those issues. Then if you scroll down, you'll see the blogs. These are just some quick blogs to tell you more about the technologies and how they're applied. If you keep scrolling down, you'll see these tech talks about the technology and how-tos on how to get started. Going back up to the code patterns, we're going to be walking through one of the code patterns today, and the one that I'll be focusing on is track financial donations with blockchain. When you click on the code pattern, you'll be taken to the IBM Code website, and this is where we have the description of the problem, the solution, and a link to the code. As I mentioned before, this specific pattern will show you how to track donations with blockchain. Specifically, we'll be using Hyperledger Composer and the IBM blockchain platform. The description of this code pattern is that there is a global citizen that can monitor the donations from a government agency to make sure that they're going where it's needed. And you can read more about this specific use case and how the solution is created on this page. If you scroll down, you'll also see the flow of how this application works and how the blockchain network functions. So let's take a look at this flow here. So if we start at number 1, first a pledge is proposed to the global citizen from an aid organization. The global citizen organization then reviews the proposal and sends the pledge to the government for the organization of funds. Third, the government organization updates the pledge proposal with the funding specifications. And lastly, the funds are transferred as per the pledge. Now just below that, you'll see 2 buttons, one to get the code and one to view the demo. If you view the demo, you can see an in-depth video on how the application works and more about the Global Citizens Program. If you click Get the Code, you'll be taken to GitHub. Let's go ahead and do that now to take a look at the code. So this will take you to the Global Citizen repository for the code. So if you scroll down, it'll tell you a little bit more about the application and the prerequisites. You also see a list of steps needed to complete the application. For the sake of the demo, I've already gone through and done a lot of these steps so that we can get right to the point. However, if you'd like to follow the pattern on your own and follow the steps, this pattern is very well detailed and will show you how to do all the steps you need to get started. So I'll be going straight to interact with the business network to show you how this application works. So to get started, we're going to go to the command line and run Composer Playground. The Composer Playground allows you to create Hyperledger Composer business networks very easily through the browser. So in this case, I'm going to go to the connection that I already have created with the Global Citizens Network that I deployed earlier. So this is the Global Citizen Business Network definition, and there are a few things in a business network definition built in a Hyperledger Composer. On the left side, you can see the files that are contained in this business network definition. The first is the README that tells you about the application. Next is the model file, and this is where your assets, participants, and transactions, and events are specified. Next is the script file, and this is where your transaction logic is actually defined. And this is using JavaScript, so it should be very familiar to many of the developers out there. Lastly, there's the access control file, and this is where you define the permissions for each participant on the network. So now that you've seen what's in the business network definition, let's go ahead and test it out and see how this network works. So to do that, we can hit the test button at the top of the page. So if you follow along with the instructions in the repository, it'll show you how to create the participants in the registry to get started. So let's go ahead and create our participants. So first, we're going to start with the aid organization. We'll create a new participant. Let's go ahead and give it the ID of aid. And then create new. And there you can see a new participant has been created and added to the network. And next, we'll create a global citizen participant. So create a new participant, and we'll name this one GC. Create new. And you can see another participant was added. Go ahead and click on gov.org. Create new participant. And we'll give this ID gov. Create new. And once again, you see a new participant has been added. So now we can go to the top right, click on the admin, and click on ID registry. So in the ID registry, this is where you can bind participants to IDs. When you issue new IDs, you give the participant the ability to interact with the business network. So let's go ahead and issue an ID for each one of our participants. And so for the first identity in the ID name, we're going to type in aid. And for participants, we can just type in aid again, and you'll see it'll find the participant that we created earlier. Go ahead and select it and create new. Let's issue a new ID. And let's do GC and GC again, and we'll find the global citizen participant we created earlier. Go ahead and create new. And lastly, there is the gov.org that we created earlier as well. Go ahead, select them and create new. All right, now we have all the IDs that we need. Let's go ahead and switch over to the aid ID and interact with the blockchain through the eyes of the aid org. So go ahead and click on the test tab at the top. And so now we're going to go to submit transaction on the left side. So the transaction tab that we want to submit is create project pledge. As we showed in the flow earlier in the GitHub repo, you can see that the aid organization submits, as you saw earlier in the flow diagram in the GitHub repo, the aid organization creates the project pledge first to start off the process. So go back to the GitHub repo and find the code you need to copy and paste into this transaction. And then click on submit. If we go ahead and click on the project pledge asset on the left, you can see that a new project pledge has been created with an ID of P1. So the next thing that the aid organization needs to do is send this project pledge over to the global citizen. So to do that, we'll click on Submit Transaction. And for transaction type, we will select Send Pledge to Global Citizen. Again, we're going to reference the GitHub repository instructions to find out what needs to go with this transaction. So now that the transaction has been submitted, you can see on the project pledge the status is now Global Citizen Review. Now that the pledge has been sent over, we can go ahead and change our ID to the Global Citizen ID. This will allow us to interact with the blockchain network through the eyes of the global citizen. Then, once you use that ID, go back to the Test tab. And then now we're going to submit a new transaction. So submit transaction, go to Send Pledge to Gov.org, and then reference the instructions. And submit. So now if you click on the gov.org participant on the left side, you can see that in the project pledge array, the project pledge with the ID of P1 is now listed. Next, we're going to go ahead and change our ID again to the government this time. So we'll find the gov.org, click on Use Now, and we'll click on the Test tab, and again we're going to submit transaction. So at this point in the process, the government is going to review the pledge and then update it with what they're going to contribute. So for this, we're going to be doing the update pledge transaction. So reference the README again for the GitHub repo, copy that code, and paste it into the transaction. So in this specific pledge, the gov.org has promised to send weekly installments to the pledge with a total approved funding of $100,000. So let's go ahead and submit this transaction. So if we go ahead and click on the project pledge asset and expand it, you can see that in the funds array, we have the promised funds from the government. However, the total funds received is at 0 right now. Let's go ahead and change that. So now, as the government organization, we're going to submit a transaction to send our first installment. So again, we're going to submit a transaction and select Transfer Funds. So in this transaction, as the government, we're going to approve the transfer of funds for one weekly installment. Once we submit the transaction, you can see that the project pledge has been updated. Now the total funds received is $1,000 to cover our first installment. So now, both the aid.org and the Global Citizen will be able to reference this project pledge to see exactly how much the government has contributed and how much is left in the approved funding. So in this case, there is visibility across all parties. Now that we've finished testing out our network, we can create a Composer REST server which will allow us to interact with our business network through an external application. So to do that, first you would install the Composer REST server package from npm, and then you would issue this command to start the network. Let's go ahead and do that now. After starting the REST server, you will be told to go to this address listed in the command prompts or terminal and just copy and paste that address into the address bar, and you'll be taken to your REST API server. So from here you can see the different endpoints for your assets, participants, and transactions. So you can see the endpoints to create a new participant, to submit a transaction, and even to view the existing participants in the network. So that's the end of the pattern. However, there are other ways to extend the pattern in order to build this out into a fully fledged application. For example, you could add additional network permissions to have more control over the participants in the network. You can implement a front end which has dashboards on interacting with the business network. You can also implement additional logic to track the payments, to implement notifications, and even to improve the transfer so that you can tie in with an existing payment system or any other payment system you create for this solution. So now is the call to action on how to get involved. So there are three ways for organizations to get involved. First is commit to the cause. This is a more lightweight interaction where we give organizations a kit that they can run with. The next is push for change, and this is where we ask organizations to designate a captain. And this captain will be fully supported in running a Call for Code Day, which is like a mini hackathon in their organization. And this will allow the colleagues in the organization to build these solutions towards Call for Code. And lastly, organizations who answer the call for code will also be sponsors. And these sponsors will receive dedicated support from IBM. More details about these levels can be found at callforcode.org. There you can see my smiling face on screen, and if you want to find me on Twitter, the name is Here's Ollie, with not one, but 2 underscores. If you want to store my projects or bash on my code, you can look for me on GitHub as odrodrig. Last but not least, you can also find me on the IBM Coder community hanging around the blockchain and Call for Code forums. If you aren't already a member, sign up at ibmcoders.influitive.com, where you can complete challenges, learn new things, and ask us any questions you may have in the forums. Now just a quick sneak peek at the IBM Coders community. Here in the IBM Coder community, you can complete these challenges to gain credits, which will apply for future prizes. You can also check out the discussions to ask any questions you may have. You'll find me in the blockchain section. Thank you all for watching, and remember to check out developer.ibm.com/call for code to get started. Thank you again, and good luck.